Hey everyone, Amanda here, the Amanda Stewart Photography. I saw some requests for a video about changing the color of your backdrops or maybe just a hat wrap. In my case, I like to change colors of headbands sometimes when they don't match my backdrop perfectly, and stuff like that. Anyway, I had originally done this video for a friend of mine online who asked me, and I said, here, let me make this. It's a little easier than explaining it. And it was without sound. I just figured out how to use the sound. So I'm going to go ahead and re-record this so that I can explain it step by step. The first thing is that I actually have two different methods. Personally, I prefer one for lighter colors and one for darker colors. And we'll start with this little guy for the lighter color method. The first thing I do is go over here and I go to my hue and saturation layers and I just click that like this. Now this one right up here under master, you can just simply move around really easily and it just changes the colors. This works best on cream. White, I haven't really quite mastered whites yet, but creams are always a really good color to change. So let's give him a little blue there. I'm gonna go ahead and close that. Now I like this, but it's a little flat. So I go into my color balance right here, and I just play with these. I don't have a certain method, or I just play with it until I like it. So I'm going to go into the shadows here because that's where it's looking a little flat to me, and just give it a little something, maybe in the highlights. Just play with these till you like what you see. Paying no attention to the baby, of course. I'm going to go ahead and close that. So that looks good for now. The next thing I'm going to do is brush it off the baby. Now I have two layers over here, so to make it easier, I'm going to copy the layer so that when I brush one, it brushes it off the other. I do this by selecting the top layer and simply hitting Alt-Command-G. I'm not exactly sure what that is on a PC because I use a Mac, but it's Alt-Command-G on the Mac. Then I click this little mask down here. If you're not familiar with masks, you're going to want to have this white background. So that means that if you're brushing it off the baby, you're going to want the color black. Now I do this at 100% and I go ahead and simply brush it off the baby. Now I'm getting some of the hat, but that's okay because I'll go back and fill that in later. Now for me, I'm very monochromatic. So if I was changing the color of the backdrop for this photo, I would also be changing the color of the hat. I just like blue on blue, pink on pink, green on green, etc. So we're just brushing it off the baby. And I'm just going to do this real quick. Just not get too detailed on it for video purposes. So if this was an image I was going to give to a client, I would be zooming in and out and making sure that everything was masked on and off perfectly. But for video, I'll just go ahead and leave it at that. Now here we have the blue backdrop, which was originally cream, as you can see. Now you can go back in here and see that if I move this around, there are so many options just by sliding this over here. You can also adjust this saturation layer for something more deep or maybe something a little more muted. Now this is a boy, so I'm going to put the blues back up there. And there you have it. Nice and pretty simple. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this and take you over to a darker color backdrop like we have right here. Now, don't mind this photo, it's unedited unlike the previous one. Now here we have these two twin baby girls, and mom loved this cranberry color. I adored this cranberry color. It's just a very pretty color all around. Unfortunately, at the moment, I did not have a cranberry colored Flacati, so I grabbed the closest thing I could. From here, I'm going to go over to Layer, New Fill Layer, and choose a solid color. I'm going to take just click OK and take the eyedropper tool. That didn't work. So here, go over here. Re-click that, take the eyedropper tool, and click color from the wrap, which I want the color of the Flacati to be. I can go back up here and slide this up. From here, I'm going to change the layer to a soft, light layer. And here you can see now that it's gone from that muted purple to a deep cranberry. Then, if I so choose, I can go back to the color balance layers and play around with this. I like to go over my highlights and sometimes just clip some highlights in there just a little bit so that it doesn't look so flat from the color change. But Soft Light does a very good job of adding the depth on its own. From here, I'm going to do the Alt-Command-G, and I did it on the wrong layer. Do it on the top one. Alt-Command-G to copy this bottom layer right here. Take my black brush on a white mask and brush it off the babies. Now here I can also brush it off the wraps because that is the color I selected from. Again, I'm just going to do this very quickly for video purposes. There. Now if I wanted to adjust it more now that I can see the wraps, I can go into these layers and tweak it until it really matches. And now we have a nice matching backdrop to the wraps. So there's the before and there's the after. Now one thing that I like to do to make sure that my work is consistent is if I have multiple images open, I would go ahead and make an action so that I can run it on every image from that set and it would come out exactly the same. The way I do this is I go ahead, I go down here and I click this. Let's go ahead and name this action Blue Backdrop from Cream. I simply hit record and follow the steps I did before about changing the colors. So let's put that blue back on there. Open up my color balance layer. There we go, I like those shadows right there. Go ahead and copy that layer with the Alt-Command-G and then hit stop. From here, I'm going to go ahead and delete this and I can take these three images I have open and run the same color by going to File, Automate, Batch, and running that action that I just created. So now you can see that all three are the same color. And then from there, I go ahead and mask them each individually. Now, as you can imagine, if you have a lot of images that you want to change the color of, this can be a bit time consuming. So it's not something that I choose to do regularly. But if I have a headband or maybe a hat that is slightly off colored from the backdrop that I'm using and I don't like the way it looks, it comes in very handy. It also is nice if mom and dad have a specific color that they'd like to use that I don't own, or maybe baby just became uncooperative and all we got the baby on was cream, I can throw in a little color in there for them. Well, I hope everyone learned something new. And this is a nice simple thing that you can just play around with and figure out different colors on your own. If you have one that you really like, I always suggest recording it and creating your own action. Hope everyone has a good time. Talk to you later.